But it would also have been very easy for Brendan Rodgers to say, look, you know what, guys, I'm here to concentrate in Celtic. We've got enough problems, whatever. But he certainly took the invitation to talk about Russell Martin, and then without being asked any further, he then went on to volunteer, if you like, the fact that he felt it was a bit off that guys that had been either in his shoes or sitting on the Rangers bench last season have been, I don't know how he decided, critical. And Barry Ferguson in his column tomorrow is sort of responding to that. And it's quite interesting. And obviously it'll be in the paper tomorrow. I can read you just a couple of lines from it, a couple of excerpts.
Absolutely.
But it is interesting. So he responds, the one thing I would stress is that it hasn't diminished in any way my respect for him as an excellent and very successful manager. But I do feel I have to make it clear that what he said was wrong. Neither myself, Neil McCann or Billy Dodds have said anything disrespectful about Russell or what's been going on at Rangers this season. I've listened to every word of it, and it's been constructive at all times. None of it has been even remotely personal. People have said the criticism was aimed at my backroom staff, but for me, it was aimed at all of us. They were my staff, I was in charge, so it was aimed at me as well. Their tactics obviously weren't perfect because we lost a few games, and we know we could and should have done better in some of them. But we did get our tactics spot on when we won at Celtic Park, and they couldn't beat us at Ibrox in the second Old Firm derby. So we also had a good idea of what we were trying to do. Like I've said, it's an emotional game. Sometimes people say things they later regret. I'm not angry, but we are guys who have played, coached, and understand the game. So I found the tone of what was said just very unnecessary. And there's plenty more where that came from.
Aye.
But yeah, it's always interesting when because it's far from the norm, isn't it? And I think in Barry's column, he makes the point there is this unwritten rule where you don't kind of you don't laugh at what's going on the other side of the fence. You very rarely comment on it. You know, that's not your job, and it is an unwritten sort of managerial rule, I guess, this part of the world. So yeah, it is interesting if there's a bit of mud flying, and there seems to be. But I think he was clearly a little bit surprised by some of the comments and the nature of it from Brendan. And I think he goes on to say at some point in the column that he felt it was very much a deflection tactic aimed to distract away from the fact that, you know, Brendan's currently in a difficult position in terms of his own relationship with his own board and some of the stuff that's going on over the summer. So, yeah, a bit bitchy on both sides, maybe. But interesting.
Definitely.
There's plenty more to Barry Ferguson's column in tomorrow's paper. Some really interesting stuff on his relationship with Nico Raskin, and how he managed him as a player, and you know, his thoughts on how to deal with Nico Raskin if he is being challenging or opinionated. And you know, and I think overall, though, he was just pleased to see the hatchet getting buried between Russell Martin and Nico Raskin at the weekend when Raskin was back in the starting 11 and clearly the best player in the part against Hibs. So yeah, there's quite a lot to consume in Barry's column in tomorrow's paper. I thoroughly recommend it.
I definitely. I mean, I know you're biased, but that sounds like necessary reading for any, not just Rangers fans, I guess, football fans.
Yeah.
We've got some responses to it, Keith, that I want to get your take on. Marzuno again says Rodgers was absolutely bang on. Ferguson shouldn't be critiquing the manager when he's just out the door himself. AGSC text says Ferguson simply just hanging out, waiting for his next crack at being emergency Rangers manager. He's a stalking horse for every Rangers manager. Even Neil Lennon moved on. What do you make of those comments?
I think that's a bit unfair, isn't it?
I thought a wee bit unfair, that one.
I agree with what Barry Ferguson said in that I don't think that any of, you know, either him or his backroom staff have been critical of Russell Martin. I'm not sure that they have. I think they've been asked in their various positions in the media to analyse performances, and I think Neil McCann was in Sports Scene the other night, and I think it stems back to that after the Rangers lost at home to Hearts, and Neil McCann was making some points, and I think I agreed with a lot of what he said in terms of the Rangers backline are so high up that they're easy to pick off. And I think they had a similar sort of tactical approach last season, that they wanted them to be the back line to push quite far up. But when they lost possession, to fall maybe 10 yards back in, just to give themselves or to give less room in behind to be attacked. And that's been one of the major tactical flaws, I think, with the Russell Martin setup this season, that Rangers have been defending really high up the pitch, and when they've lost the ball, there's been a turnover of possession. There's so much space to get in behind them. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think if you're being asked to analyse and paid to do a tactical analysis on a national TV show about the game itself, I think Neil McCann wouldn't be doing his job. And I never got the feeling at any point that I've heard anything where I thought, well, that's a bit naughty. They're actually, they've overstepped a mark here. I think they're just, and it's difficult because, they were in there last season. But I would certainly, about Barry Ferguson, he's kept a really low profile. And I know that as part of his ambassadorial duties for the club, he has been back at games. But you'll not see Barry Ferguson in a director's box or pictured beside anybody because he stays out the way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a sign of deference towards Russell Martin and, probably some of the stuff that's going on previously at that club. I think he's well advised to stay out the way. He's certainly not, hanging about or trying to impose himself on anybody or to be seen and to be present. I think he's very quietly fulfilling his ambassadorial role, and I think he actually deserves a bit of credit for that rather than criticism.